Danger, Will Robinson, danger. Sorry, it's actually a crime for me to start a review of something related to Lost in Space without quoting that. Anyways, this is another commissioned review, the remake of the series Lost in Space. I say remake, reboot would be more appropriate in this case. People can get hair splitty about which they use, or they cannot use them properly and just use them interchangeably. To me, a reboot means taking the concept and doing it completely new. Remake means going over the same plot beats again. This is very much a reboot of the classic television show and the far less classic 90s movie that I admittedly have a little bit of a soft spot for, just because it's enjoyably bad. But in any case, I was commissioned to take a look at the first 2 episodes of this. Here's a funny thing. I actually went back and checked because I was concerned I might have already reviewed this. Because I did watch the full first season of this. The thing was, back in 2018, I was not, unless I burned through it really quickly and so I could get it relatively close to when a thing came out, I wasn't doing what I do now in the break room, which is to offer up reviews of the majority of things that I just happen to have watched if I have thoughts to share. That is a bit more of what I do now, but I didn't back then. So even though I had seen the entirety of the first season before, I never reviewed it. I never talked about it. The fact that I did not come back for the second or third seasons maybe tells you a little bit. But don't assume too much. Well, assume a little. Here's the short version of my memory of it. Was that it was fine. I just didn't care enough to come back. It wasn't something like, I don't know, Altered Carbon, where by the end of the first season, I was just so exhausted and annoyed and ticked off that I was actually like, I don't care how good anybody says the next season is. This ticked me off too much. It was nothing like that. It was more just sort of apathy. I just kind of muscled through the first season, waiting to see if it would do something that would hook me to come back in the second season, and it didn't, so I didn't. But here we're zooming in on the first 2 episodes. There are some things that are done in this that are interesting and or really good, and there's a lot that is generic and not so good. So why don't we start with the good stuff? The idea of the robot actually being a quasi-antagonistic force is an interesting wrinkle. So if you have not seen this before, the robot, which is a very much a staple of Lost in Space, it bonds with Will. The robot in this initially is destroying a colony ship, and it then crashes on the same planet that the Robinsons crash on, but it has had its memory effectively wiped. And so as it bonds with Will, it doesn't know that it destroyed the ship, the bigger ship that the Robinsons are supposed to be safely on right now and aren't. So there's that. And the design works pretty well. I think that the robot in general is a pretty good hook in terms of like, how much can we trust this thing? How much does Will trust this thing? Because Will wants to keep it around, but as Will kind of comes to realize what it is, he also doesn't tell his family and can't bring himself to, sort of make it go away or try to destroy it. So it's interesting how that develops. The other big win for this show is Dr. Smith, played by Parker Posey. Oh, she's great. Dr. Smith is an odd kind of character in the original show because he is so much of a problem all the time that part of you is like, why? Obviously they are good people and they have consciences, so they won't just abandon him to die, but you're like, you really should. You really should. So she is very much still that kind of person, but the thing is, nobody else knows it. And I'll try not to get into stuff we learn about her later that I do remember, but the short version is that she's just a con woman. But she's a very good con woman. Because here's the thing, and I think this is part of the detriment that so often con artist stories are primarily male stories. Not exclusively, but they very frequently are. And the closest a lot of women characters get is to be more of a femme fatale, which is a different thing. But the thing is, we're used to the con artist being like really slick, really just like, oh yeah. And you're like, ooh, I don't know if I can trust you, but I think maybe I can get you on my side, but I don't know if you're playing me. And like, that's fun. I like con artist movies. So like, I'm not trying to knock that. That's fun. But a real con artist, it doesn't get you to trust them by being suave and charismatic and slick. They just really know how to manipulate people. And that's what she does. She's not slick. She doesn't have incredible insider knowledge. She doesn't have amazing insight into people. She just knows what things she can lean on and what buttons she can push that will probably get her the result she wants. And she is, at least at this point in the show, ruthless. But nothing about how she comes across to the people who are interacting with her betrays that. She's a really fascinating, because like I said, she is still very much the character, like, you should abandon her to die. But making her a con woman was brilliant, because that explains why nobody is doing that, because they don't realize what they're dealing with her when she first shows up. Also, a really funny thing, because like, Dr. Smith is not even her actual name. She's pretending to be that because, like, being a doctor, that opens some doors. And, you know, she stole a guy's jacket at one point. But the real Dr. Smith, quote unquote, was played by Bill Mumy, who I know now from Babylon 5, but was Will Robinson in the original show. So that was a fun little cameo in the front end. So she's great. And I remember her being like the main thing that was like, oh, she's so good. So there's some other decent stuff. This version of Dom West, you know, sort of the hotshot pilot kind of guy. He's, you know, he's roguish. He's got a little bit of that Han Solo energy going for him. And it works. He's kind of fun. I dig him. He doesn't get a ton to do in these first 2 episodes, but no, I like him. The problem, by and large, is the family. It's the Robinsons themselves. And that is a problem on some individual levels, but also as an overall thing, at least for me. So, on individual levels, the big problem is the father. John, I think. Wow, is he bland. And, like, they picked a character archetype that it makes sense, but is so hard to do in a way that's like compelling and engaging and not boring, because he's the guy, he's professionally in the military. I think he's like a SEAL team or something, but like, you know, he knows how to relate to orders and, you know, battle tactics and these things, but he doesn't know really very well how to relate to his own kids. And like, that's not an invalid character, but it means he has almost no dynamic with his kids. And he has a antagonistic dynamic with his wife, who he was on the verge of divorcing before they went off into space. There's also like a whole backstory thing about the Earth basically being in a post-apocalyptic state at this point. I'm not sure how much that adds or contributes, but I mean, that's there. It's fine as far as a reason to get them off site. There's like some interesting stuff within the family, like the fact that Will actually didn't pass his clearances to be able to go into space. He failed under the stress tests, but his mother actually, Maureen, she manipulates the test so that he gets to come and he's not left behind. Like, okay, that's a little something. But other than that, there isn't a lot here. And like I said, the father may be the big walking bland thing. And I think it's slightly exacerbated by the fact that he's an English actor doing an American accent. And like, it's not that always kills characterization, but I do find that it often hinders it. Well, honestly, not only with Brits playing Americans. In general, putting on an accent is is a risky thing for an actor to do, because if they're focused too much on keeping the accent going, you can end up with flat characterization, and that very much feels like what's going on here. And it's not even that the accent is bad or unbelievable, like it's generic American, it's fine, but boy, is this guy a walking block of wood. He has no personality at all. And the rest of them they feel very one note. Will is stress. Judy is, well, the first 2 episodes is hurt, but like Judy is tense with the dad. Penny is slightly rebellious. Mom is human calculator. There isn't a lot to go on early on. And I think if I were to redo this myself, I just have one major change, one major thing that I'd flip. This starts out with a family dynamic that is not in good shape, especially when it comes to the father. Like, they're already a little bit of a broken family at the start of this. Now, I know why writers do this and shows do this, is they think, oh, and over the course of the show, they'll come together. Except, you know what? Maybe I'm the only one, but I find it a lot more compelling to take a strong family unit and put that under extreme pressure and see where the cracks emerge and see where they start to break, as opposed to taking an already broken family unit and, being like, oh, and they'll come together. Part of the problem with starting with an already broken family unit is I'm a little bit less invested in them as a group because they're not functional. Again, maybe it's just me, but I'm more invested in a group that seems to care about each other. Love, and it's not so extreme that they seem like they don't even love each other. Like, they do, but this dynamic doesn't work. This family unit isn't healthy. And it's harder for me to be invested in the safety of something that feels like it's already not working. And you can make it work, but again, I feel like it's the go-to. It's kind of like how whenever there's a sequel to something where in the first one, 2 characters hooked up, in the sequel, they're always on the outs or broken up, or one of them just isn't there, because writers, I get that conflict drives character and story and everything else, but not every layer has to be conflict. You can have some stable stuff. In fact, I would say more stories would benefit from it. And this would. The best moment for the family is the opening moment of the first episode, where they're sitting around a table playing Go Fish, and they're a little bit awkward about it, and you're not sure why. And then you realize it's because they're waiting for the ship to crash. They know it's going to crash no matter what they do, and they're just trying to pass the time until it does. That's great. And that is the feel that I want for more of it. But it really is just kind of that opening bit. I think so many things just work better when there is some stabilizing force somewhere in it. This thing is just a cavalcade of stuff going wrong, to the point that it gets a little bit farcical at times, because Will is out and he's in this forest and he's up this tree with the robot, and things are already tense because we don't fully know what the deal with the robot is yet. But it's oh, and then a fire starts in the forest. Just cuz. And once he's clear of that fire, it never comes up again. We never see it burning. It doesn't keep going. Later on, there's a storm, and it they even could have used that to be it puts it out. But, well, it was also a weird rock storm. And never mind. But they're just piling on thing after thing after thing after thing. This goes wrong. This goes wrong. This goes wrong. And I get that, they're trying to really make the point of how tense the situation is. But at a certain point, if you don't stop and give them a breather and be okay, let's try and deal with this one thing, and give them a chance to do that before the next thing or the next 3 things also go wrong. You're not giving me a chance to get to know these people because I'm only ever seeing them in panic mode and crisis mode. Now, I know that dials back a little bit later on, but it is so overloaded in these first 2 episodes that it kind of sets a tone and a pace that doesn't benefit the show, because if you really want me to get invested, you got to make me care about these people, and it doesn't really do that. Not in these first 2 episodes, at least. And based off my memory, it didn't really do it for the first season. Other than Dr. Smith, who I didn't care about because, like, I wanted good things for her. I cared about her because she was fascinating. The effects are a little bit all over the place, too. A lot of the space stuff's good. The robot's good. The fire looks like garbage. Absolutely terrible. Like 1990s PC game fire effects. It's bad. Like it is legitimately really bad. But that ultimately doesn't matter all that much. And rewatching this now, I get why I stuck with it, hoping that the good stuff that I'm seeing would basically kind of like spread out and influence more and more of the show and you know, not necessarily take over, but like this stuff's really good. If more things can get on that level, it'll be great. But to my memory, it doesn't really. There is, again, though, definitely some really good stuff in here. It's trying too hard. There's too many disaster elements too early, and we don't really get a sense of this family as a unit, which I think was the big key thing that they kind of dropped the ball on, especially for opening episodes. Like, we do get a sense of what their dynamic is, but their dynamic isn't necessarily something you're going to root for, or at least I'm not going to. You know, I guess for some people, maybe it's a case of like, oh, the way in which this family is not fully functional is something that I can relate to, so I'm going to root for them to get better. Like, maybe that is the case for some people. For me, it's like, boy, this family is dysfunctional. It makes me not care as much about whether they can pull it together. I'm not saying I want the characters to die. I'm just saying, like, it's harder to root for a family where I'm not sure if they're actually good for each other. But whatever. It was a solid try. And certain parts are really good. Just not enough of them, I don't think. Lost in Space, did you see this remake? What did you think about it? Did you watch more of it than the first season? Did you watch the original show? Did you watch the cheesy 90s one with Matt LeBlanc firing a laser at space spiders? Anybody else watch that one? Because I did. More than once. Why, I don't know. But whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. They all help me out. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. Massive thanks to my Patreon supporters, and in particular, I want to thank Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Ruth, Oliver B., Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Melinda Walters, Jen, Leotha Boyd, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernabilax the Poodle, Robin Powell, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Kasparov, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, David Hall, Shayla Gourlay, and Rosalind Bennett. Thanks for your support. You can get your name in the credits too if you feel like hearing me possibly struggle with it for several times before getting it right.